Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's contractor training webinar, CPACE Retrofit Financing for EV Charging Infrastructure. We're excited to have you all on today. A couple of quick housekeeping notes before I turn it over to our presenters. We are recording today's presentation, so we will send out a link to that after the fact, so you have access to that. And as we go along, you can put in your questions at any point during the presentation, and we'll get to them all at the end. So type them in and ask away. So without any further delay, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Elise Bazzelli.
Great, thank you, Rudy, and welcome everybody. Glad to have you all here this afternoon, or this morning, I guess, still. So just really quickly, we'll go through, I'll do a quick introduction. We'll talk a little bit about the Connecticut Green Bank. I'll do a quick overview of the Green Bank. Then we'll talk about the CPACE financing program and also about the process and what it means for EV charging infrastructure. We'll talk about some of the tools that we have available for you all to use, as well as marketing support. And then we'll also follow up with the contact information for all of us, and we will open it up for questions. As Rudy mentioned, we're going to record this. We'll send that recording out to everybody along with the slides, so you'll have all of these slides after the fact. We added in a bunch of URLs and things that you'll be able to see when you get these slides in your email. So don't worry about jotting everything down as you're listening. And also just a reminder that you can use the chat function throughout the presentation. So feel free to do that. We've got some folks standing by to answer those questions as they come up. So definitely take advantage of that chat feature. All right, next slide. So just a quick overview of the, I guess actually I should introduce myself, shouldn't I? I'm Elise Bazzelli. I work on our financing programs team here at the Green Bank. I'm joined by Rudy Stirk from our marketing team, who you just heard a second ago. I also have Catherine Duncan and Christina Sitso on the line with me as well from the financing programs team. So they'll be available to help answer questions at the end as well. But again, welcome everybody, and glad you're joining us. So just a quick overview of the Connecticut Green Bank. The Green Bank, we're a quasi-state agency, and we use the public dollars that we get to try to attract private capital investment into the state and into the programs that we administer. Really, our main mission here is to deploy clean energy and environmental infrastructure projects here in the state. So, building programs and administering them and making sure that they're something that the market needs and wants is really what we do every day. And this just kind of gives you a quick overview of our solutions. So the different types of solutions that we have. We've got home solutions, so for homeowners, residential folks. We have a Smart E financing program, which some of you might be familiar with. So, financing for home projects and energy efficiency projects. And then building solutions, which is what we're going to be focusing on today with CPACE financing. And then we also have some community and investment solutions as well. So really ways for any type of industry to get involved and to use the Green Bank to their advantage. And so just kind of quick before I dive into what CPACE is, so you're all here as contractors and developers, out there doing projects, building projects. So why should you work with us? I know I saw a lot of familiar names here today, as well as some brand new ones, which is really exciting. But really, this is just to kind of explain, why you might want to work with us here at the Green Bank and with the CPACE program. So we're, as I mentioned, a quasi-state organization. So, kind of leveraging that fact And when you're speaking to building owners, explaining that you're working with a financing program that the state essentially administers, can lend some credibility to this program. And also, we're trying to support you as much as we can. That's a theme throughout this whole presentation here. Really, we want to provide you all as much support as we can. Over 80% of our CPACE projects that we close have been developed by a contractor. So it's really important that we are here to support you, that we give you the tools that you need to continue to use this program as a tool to help you close deals. So whatever we can do to help give you that confidence and the ability to use this tool as a selling option when you're talking to building owners, that's our goal. And then also creating some new opportunities. So potentially, accessing new customers that maybe don't have that cash on hand to do projects, or maybe even going back to your existing portfolio of business that you talked to a year or two ago, and they might have said, yeah, this sounds like a great project, but I just don't have the funds to do it now, or maybe later. Being able to kind of expand that portfolio of building owners through this financing option. So hopefully creating some new opportunities for you. Okay, so now just to quickly talk through this CPACE program. And I mentioned, I know we've got some familiar folks on the line here, so you've heard me say this spiel before, but for the new folks, what is CPACE? So CPACE stands for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, and it's financing available to commercial properties for green solutions. We recently have expanded the CPACE program to include EV charging infrastructure and resilience projects. So previously, up until about a year ago, CPACE was available only for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. But we've expanded that statute now, and we allow for EV charging infrastructure and resilience. Of course, you're all here to hear about EV charging infrastructure specifically. Resilience guidelines should be out later this summer. But the commercial properties, that really covers anything that isn't a residential property and isn't a municipal or state property. So think of all the traditional commercial properties, retail, industrial, hotels, restaurants, office buildings, all of those things fall under the commercial umbrella, as well as multifamily property. So 5 units or greater is considered commercial multifamily. And then also nonprofits. So houses of worship, community centers, boys and girls clubs, YMCAs, all of those fall under the commercial category. And then long-term, low-cost funding for up to 25 years. This is a big one. This is kind of where CPACE financing diverges from the traditional commercial loans that a building owner might be used to. So typically, you might get a construction loan for 5, 7, maybe 10 years, and usually you're putting some money down for that project, 20%, 15, 20%. With CPACE, we're able to offer terms of up to 25 years. And really that's because this program was meant for clean energy projects and now EV charging and resilience projects. So a lot of times those can take some time to pay themselves back. It's not, a month ROI in a lot of cases. So being able to pair some of the clean energy measures that we're offering with long terms, that allows building owners to actually realize some of those energy savings by paying a small amount over a long period of time. And that's especially important, I think, when we're talking about EV charging infrastructure as well, and pairing EV charging infrastructure projects with other improvements such as solar PV. We see that a lot where there's a solar PV, maybe there's a carport installation, but pairing the EV charging infrastructure with other measures can be a really, really great comprehensive project. One thing that is a really big change, when we added the EV charging infrastructure and resilience, or we we added them to the statute. One really big change is that they were excluded from needing to meet the savings to investment ratio requirement. So for the new folks on the line, savings to investment ratio, really all that is it's taking the dollar savings from the energy improvement that you're installing over the life of that improvements, over the life of that improvement, and then comparing it to the actual investment for that project. So literally savings divided by investment. For EV charging infrastructure and resilience, they have been exempt from that. So we don't have that requirement for EV charging infrastructure. I'll say that again, there is no savings to investment ratio requirement for EV charging infrastructure. So big change, and really opens that up for the EV charging infrastructure world. And then these last two here, owner repays over time through a senior assessment, and then the assessment stays with the property regardless of ownership. So again, this is a kind of another big difference from a traditional bank loan. So I mentioned at the beginning that CPACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. So that's exactly how the repayment works. An assessment, a benefit assessment, is actually placed on the property itself, and that's how the owner is repaying their loan. So in most cases, the building owner will be making those loan payments twice a year. The CPACE assessment is going to follow whatever the tax cycle is in that particular town, which in most towns in Connecticut is twice a year. So that would be a July and January payment dates. And then that assessment stays with the property regardless of ownership. So again, kind of a selling point, if you will. A lot of times, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard this, when you're talking about financing with a building owner with something that might be a longer term payback measure, they say, well, you know, this is not going to pay for itself for 6 or 7 or 10 years, and I'm going to sell my building in, you know, in 2 years, so, you know, this doesn't make sense. The assessment will stay with the property regardless of who owns it. So think of a municipal assessment, like a water or a sewer bill, for example. If the building owner decides they're going to move down the street and they sell their building, they don't have to pay off their water bill for the next 100 years. They just need to come current, and then the new owner comes in and continues to pay that water bill. That's the same situation with CPACE. These improvements, you know, EV charging infrastructure is being installed. That infrastructure is going to stay with the property, and therefore all of the payments and that obligation remain with the property as well. So again, a difference there between CPACE and a traditional bank loan. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So specifically for EV charging infrastructure. So I mentioned already that EV charging infrastructure is exempt from the savings to investment ratio. However, it does still require what's called an energy audit in the statute, and I'll show you here in a few slides what that really entails. But essentially, we just need some information about the installation itself. So we're not looking for a savings analysis like you might do with an energy project with CPACE, but we still require some additional information, which we're calling an energy audit. And that is per the statute. That's a requirement that the statute still has. So no savings requirement, but we still need an energy audit. And then a big thing here, as I mentioned already, we can bundle EV charging infrastructure projects with other eligible measures and energy improvements. So again, keep that in mind when you're thinking about these projects and your portfolio of business and who might be eligible for a lot of different measures. Okay, and then this just kind of gives you a quick overview of the types of projects that we've seen kind of traditionally, and the property types that we're also seeing. The big thing here that I want to point out is that that highlighted minimum project size there. So $30,000 is the minimum amount that we can finance with CPACE. So again, kind of keeping that in mind when you're thinking about projects and what projects might be eligible for CPACE that have EV charging infrastructure included. I know that sometimes if we're doing just kind of a standalone, maybe a single charger, we might not quite get to that $30,000 mark, especially if there's incentives involved. So again, just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about financing and projects that might be eligible. Next slide. And then this is just something that we wanted to mention quickly. This is a new development that we have available. So the Green Bank successfully pioneered a methodology to mint carbon credits for EV charging activity, and that can provide additional revenue streams for charger owners. So the link is in the bottom here, in the bottom of the slide. And there's some contact information there for our managing director of operations, Eric Schrago. He's the one that is kind of heading this whole thing up. So really, we just wanted to make you all aware of this. So again, another thing that you can mention when you're talking to property owners about EV charging infrastructure, whether they're using our financing or not, they still may be perfectly eligible for some additional carbon credits. Okay, so now just to talk through some of the other key stakeholders that are part of the CPACE program. And again, just really want to mention these folks as part of the process because, again, this is a different type of loan. So really just want to kind of give you guys the full picture of what CPACE is. So these are some of the other stakeholders that we work with as the administrator of the program. Excuse me. So the first one here is mortgage holders. So in that what is CPACE slide, a few slides ago, I mentioned that the assessment is tied to the property and that it stays with the property regardless of ownership. Another key part of that is that the CPACE assessment is a senior assessment, which means that it would come before any existing property secured debt on the property. So what that means is if there's a mortgage, if the property owner has a mortgage on the property, we require that mortgage holder to consent to subordinate to CPACE, essentially say take a second position. And a lot of folks, first knee-jerk reaction to that is, well, that's never going to happen. They'll never want to do that. Nobody wants to take a second position. But in fact, we've had some really good success with that in Connecticut. We've had over 50 different lending institutions subordinate to CPACE. We have like a 92 or 93% success rate with getting consent. So really the biggest reason for that is the fourth bullet point down there. The CPACE assessment is non-accelerating. Really all that means is that even if you have $1 million CPACE assessment on the property and, worst case scenario, the mortgage holder has to foreclose, the only portion of that $1 million that would come before the mortgage would be anything that's late or anything that the building owner has not paid yet, which the term is if it's in arrears. So in reality, that's gonna probably be a pretty small amount, if anything, maybe a year, 18 months worth of CPACE payment. So once the mortgage holders kind of understand the non-acceleration nature of CPACE, they can get pretty comfortable with it quickly. So that's why we've had some really good success. Plus, we're improving the asset. There's EV charging infrastructure added, or there's other energy measures that are added, making the property better than the one next door that might not have any of those energy or technology improvements. Okay, and then the next one here, capital provider. So we talked at the beginning about how the Green Bank is the administrator of the CPACE program here in Connecticut. And we also wear another hat where we are a capital provider or an eligible lender in the CPACE program. We, along with about 20 other private capital providers, are eligible to lend in the CPACE program. So the Green Bank both administers the program, where we are essentially checking to make sure that all of the statutory and programmatic requirements are met for every project, regardless of who's financing it. And then, also one of the private capital providers that are able to lend in the market. And as we talked about at the very beginning of what's the goal of the Green Bank in general, trying to attract that private capital investment into Connecticut is one of our main goals. So we're very proud to have a lot of private capital investors working in the CPACE program. And then the last one here, municipalities. So the CPACE program in Connecticut is a statewide program, which means that every town or every taxing jurisdiction, the CPACE program is going to be the same. So as a developer, contractor, you don't have to worry about differences from town to town when you're trying to sell a project. The only part of that, though, to keep in mind is that because it is a statewide program, we require that each individual town opt in to participate in the program. Really, all that means is that the legislative body in the town needs to sign a resolution with the Green Bank saying, yes, we're allowing our commercial property owners in our town to take part in this financing program if they wish. We already have about 140 municipalities out of 169 participating. So all of those green towns have already joined, with more coming on board relatively often. We only have a few more to get on board, and a lot of them that have not joined yet are simply, they just haven't joined because we haven't had a project there, or there's no building owners that are working on projects. A lot of them aren't, actively not participating. So if you do, we have a list of these up on our website as well, alphabetical list. So if you're working in a town, just check that list, make sure that they're participating in CPACE. If they're not, just get in touch with us as soon as possible, and we'll start to work with the town to get them on board. But certainly always helps when there's an active project in the town to get them on board quickly. Okay, great. So now just to talk about the process itself. So the first thing you want to do is fill out an application. You can do that on behalf of the property owner. The property owner can do it themselves, either way. It's an online application. There's the link to it. Takes about 5 minutes to fill out. We're just looking for information about the project itself, the property location, contact information, and then we also ask about that mortgage right on the initial application, so we can, make sure that we're tackling that important piece, that requirement early on if we need to. Once we get the application in, we'll do a quick review, and then we'll move it on to the underwriting stage here. We'll work with the property owner on the financial underwriting piece. We're essentially collecting the last 3 years of financial documents from the property owner. And we'll also work with you all on the technical underwriting. For EV charging infrastructure projects that are just EV charging, all we'll need for that is that audit report, that data collection sheet, which I'll show you here in a couple of slides. But if you're pairing that with some energy measures, there's some additional requirements that we'll need, and we'll work with you directly on collecting all of those technical documents. Then we usually issue a term sheet to the property owner, just kind of a good mid-process gut check with amount financed, terms, and interest rates. And then next slide. From there, we will work on lender consent. Sometimes we'll work on this earlier in the process. We can kind of work on it really as soon as we get an application in, more or less. So if we have any banks that we think might give us trouble, or maybe the property owner is like, we want to start this earlier, we can do that. We can be very flexible with the consent. It's also something that we participate in pretty often. There's, we are happy to kind of drive that part of the process with the loan officer, as long as the building owner wants us to do that. Then we'll get the project officially approved. And once we get everything, all the underwriting, consent, everything in, the project's approved, we can close on the financing. The closing and the finance agreement is always going to be with the owner of the property itself. I want to make sure that's really clear. So I'll say it again. We are always signing our finance agreement with the owner of the property. So not the operating business, not a tenant, always with the actual owner of the property, because of course, this is an assessment that goes on their property. So they would be the ones that are responsible for making that payment. So again, something to keep in mind when you're thinking about, which projects might be eligible for CPACE. And then once we close, that's typically when construction begins and we can start dispersing funds. So of course, we can't disperse any of the financing until after we close. So again, something to keep in mind as you're thinking about your process. But once we close and the project begins, we can start dispersing those funds. Those funds can go either directly to the property owner who will pay you, or if the property owner would like to, they can choose to have those funds go directly to you on a disbursement by disbursement basis. Then when the project is complete, the last thing that we'll do is a project commissioning. And it's not a traditional commissioning in the sense that we're not testing the equipment. Essentially what we're doing is we're going out to the site and making sure that the equipment that we underwrote when we did our technical underwriting is what was actually installed. And that's really the process. So now to talk through some of the tools and marketing materials that we've got for you guys. Oh, and really quickly, these are the Green Bank rates. I know that's a question that we get a lot. So these are our current rates. Again, flagging that these are just the Connecticut Green Bank rates. So if we are the ones that are financing the project, these are the rates that you can look at. Other capital providers may have different rates. So again, just keeping that in mind. And again, you'll get this list, so these slides, so you'll have all of those. And then the resources and materials. So this is an important page. The URL's down there. Again, you'll get these slides, so you'll have that. But if you go to our Contractor Solutions, Building Solutions resources page, this is what you'll see. And I know it's a little blurry, apologies for that, but there's a bunch of different resources here for you as the contractor developer. But I've highlighted the EV audit report model. So that's the document that you'll be able to fill out if you're doing an EV charging infrastructure project. I also wanted to call out on the same page, a little bit further down, you'll see this section here for the savings to investment ratio calculator. There's a button, that green button, that unfortunately you can't read because I had to blow it up a little bit, but if you click on that button, it'll allow you to download an Excel document that essentially will help you determine if you're doing an energy project or if you're doing an EV charging infrastructure plus energy project. You'll be able to put the energy savings into that calculator, and I'll show you some screenshots of that here in a second. But this is where you'd go to download both of these Excel documents to use for our technical review. And so here's a quick screenshot of what that audit report data collection sheet asks for. So again, high level details. You'll get a copy of this when we send out the follow-up email. We'll actually report attach the data collection sheet to it. So you'll see that, but you can see, just asking for information on the site, the project cost, electrical service, and the equipment. So this is essentially that energy audit, or that audit report that I was referencing as a requirement for EV charging infrastructure projects. And then these are just some quick snapshots of the SIR calculator. So the nice thing about these is we've added a new tab, which you can see there on the right. There's a tab in this Excel document specifically for EV charging audit information. So that same document that we just saw on the previous slide, all of that information lives as a tab in this calculator as well. So that way you don't have to fill out 2 documents. You just come in here. If you're doing a solar project, for example, you fill in all of the solar PV details, the energy savings, all of that. And then you also would give us the EV information on this EV audit report tab. What this does is it actually gives you the savings to investment ratio. It gives you that full calculation. It shows you the yearly savings. So really useful tool, especially if you're an organization that is doing both energy and EV charging infrastructure work. This is a really great tool to use. Okay, and now just to talk about our CPACE registered contractor list. So the first thing, and I know we've got some folks on the line here that are already registered, which is great. But if you're brand new and you'd like to become registered with the CPACE program, doing this training is the first step. So you've already done that, which is great. The next step here is to fill out a contractor application. I do want to point out that you do not need to be registered in order to do a CPACE project. This program is open to for building owners to work with any contractor that they'd like to work with. So you do not have to be registered to complete a CPACE project. However, you are listed up on our website as a registered contractor. You're able to be listed in our Find a Contractor tool. And that is where we send building owners, or building owners might go if they're not sure who they want to work with to do a project. So certainly would encourage you to become registered. The application is pretty straightforward. We just ask you for information about your company, of course, contact information, and we also ask for a few references, and then we can list you up on the website. So if you have any questions on that, you can certainly reach out to any of us on the CPACE team. But again, don't let that hold you up from doing projects in the meantime. We can work on getting you registered while you're working on closing projects. Okay. And last but not least here, so we've put together a really nice retrofit financing document here for EV charging infrastructure. So certainly something that you can take a look at, you can use, you can bring with you to conversations with building owners if they're thinking about using CPACE financing. So certainly we will make that available to you. I'm sure we can also attach a PDF document or a PDF copy of that to the follow-up email. And then we also have a landing page, which is a very long URL down there. But again, you'll have this when we send out the email afterwards. But the CPACE retrofit financing for EV charging infrastructure page is where you would go to learn a little bit more. And that is the end of the presentation there. So I have not been looking at the chat, but I know my colleagues have. But if you have any questions that you'd like answered, feel free to throw those in the chat. And if Rudy is monitoring that, or if Catherine or Christina want to read any questions out loud or any answers out loud, we can go for it.
Elise, there's one thing I wanted to say, which is can you bring up the audit report again? Is that possible?
Sure.
Okay, so especially for the person who asked about the cloud service, this audit report, as Elise mentioned, it's required by statute that there be an audit report, but logically there's not a lot to an EV audit. So we've put down the basic things we need, but if you wanted to put in a cloud service, you would just add additional things to this list. It's Excel, you can edit it. So long as you include the prices, that's all we really need, unless it's equipment and there's an EUL or an incentive associated with it.
Do you want to read out that question, Catherine, just for the rest of the group? so they know what.
Yeah, Christina, can you, because I'm having trouble managing my Q&A visually. I can't see it all.
Yeah, it's generally, they were wondering if all components as part of the EV charging infrastructure project were eligible for the financing. And they specifically called out the cloud service that is used to provide information to the owner of the infrastructure and the customer service over the life of the equipment, if that was eligible.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions that are coming up in the chat that we want to read out for the group? And feel free if you have some questions, either about the program itself or specifically about what we need for EV charging infrastructure projects. Feel free to throw those in.
The only other, key question was, what do we need in the audit? And I think the spreadsheet addresses it fully.
Excellent.
All right, so there are two questions that have come through. One about the minimum loan amount. If you could just repeat that, Elise.
Sure. Yep. The minimum amount that we can finance is 30,000. So that is post incentives or grants or anything. At least $30,000 that they're looking to finance is what we can do.
Great. And a question, sort of more clarification. So they don't need to have an energy audit. They need to have this audit report that we just showed on the screen, correct?
Correct. That's correct. Unless there is an energy component to the overall project. So if there's anything other than EV charging infrastructure that they're doing, that would require an actual energy audit. So efficiency or renewable energy projects. But if it's just an EV infrastructure project alone, all we need is that audit report, that data collection sheet.
Perfect.
All right. And I think while we're, go ahead, Rudy.
One more question.
Yeah.
Are there any refi options after closing, since EV chargers have significant reimbursement style incentives?
Like refinancing of the loan itself, I think is what the
Elise, I think they might mean after the incentives come in, so that somebody borrows the full amount. That's my guess. They borrow the full amount because it's such a long time before the incentives come in. But we wouldn't be able to release the full amount until the project is complete, which is, I think, when the incentives come out. So there are cash flow complications that still exist that I don't think can address. That's my guess is what he means, but I don't know for sure.
Yes, he said that was exactly right, Catherine. So there's a question about the carbon credit. So I'm just going to jump back to that slide quickly so you can see that that long URL. But as Elise was saying, when we send this out, we'll make sure that some of these links are included so you can click directly and go there. But here's the link to the carbon credit information.
And there's Eric's email as well, which I think we have at the very end of the presentation also. But if you have any questions about that, feel free to shoot Eric an email, and he can help answer some questions there. There we go. Yeah, so this is all of our contact info. Again, you'll have all of this, but myself, Christina and Catherine from the CPACE team. There's Eric's email again for the carbon credit program. And then also Laura, who I don't know if she's joined us today, but Laura Sobosinski from our marketing team has been doing a lot of the marketing work for EV charging infrastructure. So you have any questions about, you know, the sales sheet or information on the website or anything, you can feel free to contact Laura about that. Any other questions coming through last minute?
Not seeing any more questions, Elise.
Actually, Rudy, I have a question. The person that asked the question about the refinancing, do we have that person's name?
Of course we do.
Oh, we do. I didn't know. Okay.
Yep,
Just
we do.
I was just thinking about something that I need to think about more, and then maybe have a different answer.
We do. Yep. You can always reach out after the fact.
Okay, thanks.
All right, great. Well, not seeing any more questions come through, so we appreciate everyone's time today. As Elise said, all the contact information is on the screen. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to have launched this new aspect of CPACE, and if you have any questions going forward, please feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.